like the ex, the boss, your cousin at the 4th of July party, that guy on Facebook or X, or at some point, you got to wonder, is it me? Am I the drama? Today on Walking the Path, we're going to dive deep into the us versus them story that really lives in all of us. How, with a little forgiveness and a lot of quantum magic, we can stop fighting the world and start healing it from the inside out. Welcome to Walking the Path. I want to take a moment and just acknowledge that, there's a lot of heaviness in the world right now. War, division, political unrest, climate anxiety, all of it that's happening. And, this series is on becoming a stabilizing presence in a world in crisis. How can we be a stabilizing presence in a world in crisis? And that's what this talk is about. But before I get into the talk, I want to also mention Rythmia Life Advancement Center, which is a space where miracles happen, not because the world changes, but because we do. That's what's happening at Rythmia, is we're changing ourselves and therefore changing the world. So this talk is about the illusion of separation. And the myth of separation is embedded in the collective psyche. It's so deep that we often don't even see it. We breathe it like air. It's like we're swimming in it. Like a fish doesn't think about water, they're just in it. And on a collective scale, we see division everywhere. Racial division, where injustice is justified, right? Where difference becomes a justification for inequality. Now, I wanted to take a moment and talk about this because when I talk about racial inequality or systemic division, many people instinctively say, I'm not a racist. I treat everybody the same. And that may be consciously true, but we're often unaware of the unconscious imprints that we carry growing up in a world built on separation. I mean, we all have blind spots. And that's not because we're bad or because we're racist, but because we're human. And awareness is not a one-time decision, right? Like, I'm good. I don't have any racism in my heart. True, I don't. And yet I'm never stopping to look at my blind spots, look at the places where I might not understand how I am institutionalizing division in my own self. Let me give you an example. In Los Angeles, there's a place called the Museum of Tolerance. And when you enter, there are two doors. And one door says above it, all people without prejudice enter here. And the other door says all people with prejudice enter here. The twist is the door that people without prejudice, it doesn't open. It's a teaching. It's a reminder that we all carry bias. And the path to freedom isn't pretending that we don't. It's having the courage to look and the willingness to learn. This isn't about accusing anyone. It's about liberation. It's about seeing that separation has been passed down like a genetic code. And when we're aware of the pattern, when we start to become aware of these patterns, we can change them. Because we all have unconscious stories. We've all inherited a world where separation is normalized and where we're not here to shame ourselves, but to become more free. Because bias doesn't make me a bad person. It makes me a person in a culture that has conditioned me. But my awareness is what makes me powerful. My awareness is where I get to overcome the myth of separation. We see this myth of separation in politics, where ideological disagreement becomes personal hatred. And we see it in religion, where the sacred is used to draw lines instead of unite hearts. And religion isn't like, if you're not religious, it doesn't mean that you're not a part of that. I'm not religious and I'm a part of it. Why? Because we grow up in the Western culture, the Judeo-Christian myth. Judeo-Christian culture is imbued in the Western psychology. And that is a psychology of separation. On a basic level, the entry point to the divine is very narrow in the Judeo-Christian myth. It's like, this is holy and all of this is not. Whereas in polytheistic cultures, you see in Hindu culture, you see in ancient Greece, there's all sorts of ways to access the divine. You know, Dionysus is a god. You can access the divine through drunkenness and ecstasy. You know, there's a goddess of war, there's a goddess of beauty, there's a goddess of love. There's all of these ways that you can access the divine. So that's a different way of seeing the world. And so this isn't about blaming, and isn't about saying, oh, religion is bad. It's about acknowledging the fact that we grow up in a culture that says, here, this is good and all that's bad. And whether we believe that or not, we are in a mindset that limits what's acceptable and increases what's excluded. And let's see, there's something else that wants to come through on that. Hold on. So yeah, look at music is a great example. Music is a great example. In indigenous cultures, there's a different harmonic structure. In music, in the Western world, we've decided that 440 is the harmonic tuning. And we tune everything to that. That's given us great possibilities. Look at all the beautiful music written in the Western world. However, real tuning, I think, is like 460 or something like that. I could be wrong. You tell me if I'm wrong, but it's not 440. And making that compromise, making that, okay, we're going to limit this. We're going to create this construct of 440 so we can construct and make all this beautiful music. What's excluded is that there are more than just half tones. In Indian music, there's quarter tones. There's a whole different scale. There's all sorts of different possibilities, tonal possibilities that exist that are excluded by Western music. Now, it doesn't make Western music mad. It doesn't make Western music evil. It just means that we made a choice, and that choice reflects in the overall understanding and ability we have to compose. It's given us great flexibility, and it's limited us. That decision in music is a representation of the monotheistic mindset that says this is acceptable and that's not. That's all I'm pointing to when I say that the myth of separation is institutionalized in our psyche through our culture, whether you're religious or not. All of these echo the fundamental belief that I'm not like you, that I'm separate, and therefore I can reject, harm, or dominate or ignore you. The belief I'm not like you sneaks into our lives in very subtle, everyday ways. It might sound extreme to say this belief leads to rejection, harm, and domination. But let me bring it a little closer to home. And, you know, okay, sorry, I'm back. Ha ha. So you see someone struggling. Maybe they're unhoused, muttering to themselves in public, you know, or you see a parent losing their temper in public. And instead of connecting to their humanity, we pull away. And internally, I think, like, I would never do that to my child, or they need to get it together, right? Or what's up with them? That's not my problem. That moment is subtle. It's fleeting. It's a quiet whisper of, I'm not like you. This is how it insinuates itself into our lives. And, you know, we create these tiny lines between us and them. And we draw the line. I draw the line, and compassion dims. Presence disappears. And I start to shut the door of connection. And the myth of separation gets stronger. I do it. We all do it. I've done this. But here's the invitation that what if instead of asking what's wrong with them, I asked what happened to them? What if instead of distancing myself from them, I softened and just enough to connect with their humanity and my humanity? This is not pity. This is sacred solidarity. And that's how we begin to dismantle separation, not by fixing the world out there, but by unlearning the lines that I've learned to draw in my consciousness. Because the truth, spiritually and scientifically, is the opposite. Spiritually and scientifically, we're entangled. We belong. We belong to each other. We're connected. And this division that we see in the world is an outpicturing of the division that I see in myself. Ancient principle, as within, so without. So in everyday life, see if you do this, mind, body. There's a division between the mind and the body. I override my body's needs by pushing through, or getting another cup of coffee or a little more mambe, or not taking a nap, pushing myself further. My mind is overriding my body. There's a division there. I'm creating that division. Soul versus self is another way. We treat our humanity, my humanity, like something to be ashamed of. The places where I draw separation, the ways in which I otherize people, the ways in which I condemn myself, all of that, those stories that I'm broken, all of that stuff, I don't want to admit. Nobody's putting jealousy and envy on their highlight reel, right? Those are ways that I begin to treat. It's very human to be jealous. It's very human to want to be seen. It's very human to have an ego, but I treat those things as something to punish. I begin to separate within myself. I distance myself from my own humanity. So of course I'm going to distance myself from the humanity of someone I see muttering to themselves on the street, or a parent that I see, punishing their child in public. We also do this. I see within myself that I do this as victim versus perpetrator. When I cling to the old stories, the old roles, and forget that everyone has been hurt, right? These inner divisions create anxiety and shame and a low grade sort of civil war inside of me. And because as within, so without, these inner divisions shape how I show up in the world, how I relate, how I react, how I make choices. So when we heal the inner divisions, we stop treating our parts, the parts of ourselves, as enemies. We become less reactive to the outer divisions. We don't add fuel to the fire, but we bring presence to it. So the myth of separation creates fear, othering, a justification for violence, because I'm doing that violence to myself all the time. So of course I'm going to project it out in the world. This is how healing myself heals the world. So in the spiritual truth is there's no separation. There's only one life expressing in many forms. I constantly remind myself I'm connected to everything and everyone. We are one. I'm connected to everything and everyone. We are one. I'm not separate from anything that I see. In fact, I'm entangled with it. Quantum physics is telling us about entanglement. So, the inner divide is outpictured out there. What we see out there is often a projection of what's unhealed in here. And when I shift from surface perception to spiritual vision, and remember that we're not disconnected from the world. We're not just witnessing the world, but we're participants in its creation through the lens of our consciousness. And this is how we create the world, through how we see it. I love the biblical statement from Isaiah. Behold, I shall do a new thing. I shall create a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert, if ye have but eyes to see and ears to hear. What are the eyes to see and ears to hear? Quantum physics teaches us that the act of observation changes what we observe. Consciousness is not passive, it's participatory. And this isn't just poetic, it's physics. The double slit experiment in quantum physics shows that particles behave differently depending on whether they were observed. Matter literally shifted in response to the conscious awareness of the observer. So what does that mean for us? It means that we're not innocent bystanders in the world. We're not innocent bystanders in a world gone mad, right? We're the creators, we're the generators, participants in a vast field of potentiality. And the quality of our awareness influences the shape that our lives and the shape of our lives and the shape of the world. I was told recently, not recently, years ago, a teacher of mine said, by right of consciousness, you deserve. And I thought what he meant was, by right of the fact that I'm awake, aware, alive, I deserve. We were talking about it in terms of prosperity. And just recently, 8 years after he told me this, I just texted him this morning to say, I finally got what you were telling me. It's not by right of consciousness I deserve because I'm awake, because I'm aware, because I'm alive. It's by right of the level of consciousness that I have. By right of the way that I'm holding consciousness within me, I have the right to everything that I can become in consciousness. I must become it in consciousness first. Consciousness precedes form. So by right of my consciousness, I get everything I deserve. If I'm experiencing lack, limitation, worry, doubt, fear, it's because of my consciousness. And so if we see only fear, we strengthen fear. When we see only separation, we amplify division. But when we choose to see through the circumstance, through the condition, through the form, see through the appearance, through the conflict, through the personal division, through the personality, through the circumstance, and witness the oneness behind it, we activate a field of coherence and compassion that has real energetic impact in our lives and in the lives around us. But spiritual vision sees through different eyes. Spiritual vision begins by asking the question, what's really going on behind or beneath this appearance? What is this moment inviting me to remember about oneness? How can I hold love? How can I hold love even if I don't understand? This is the essence of the mystic's gaze. This is not just with the senses, but with the soul. And we look beyond the form to perceive the divine blueprint behind it. The alchemical principle is all things partake of the one thing. All things partake of the one thing. Even war partakes of the one thing. So can I see through the appearance, through the conflict, through the personality to the essence behind it? Where in my life am I only seeing the surface? How can I soften my gaze to see with the eyes of love? What a great question. By right of consciousness, I deserve whatever I am holding in my consciousness. Excuse me. I must have eyes to see. I must have a consciousness that sees that which I wish to experience in the material world. So examples are like my harsh inner critic. My harsh inner critic equals my judgment of others. My own shame and guilt is hiding in defensiveness and polarization outpictured in the world. So where in my life have I made myself or another other? Where am I perpetuating that division? And where do I still see duality? Love versus fear, good versus bad, me versus them. This isn't about blame. It's about radical self-responsibility, radical self-awareness as an act of healing. And so healing. I want to talk about forgiveness. Forgiveness as a quantum tool. Forgiveness as a quantum tool. This is where forgiveness flows directly from the idea that perception is creation. Perception is creation. And forgiveness is showing how forgiveness is not about condoning behavior, but about collapsing thought from a waveform of separation into choosing again oneness. So I want to begin by talking about, the power of perception. When we begin to understand that our perception generates reality, then forgiveness is more than a virtue. It becomes like a quantum intervention. It's not about excusing someone's behavior. It's about releasing my own identification with the story of separation that keeps us wound up in that story. And every time I replay that story of someone who wronged me or how I've been wronged, I collapse my consciousness back into the past and I reinforce the illusion of me versus them. But when I can forgive deeply, not just in words, but in my frequency within me, then I collapse that energetic charge. I create a new timeline. In quantum terms, forgiveness is the conscious collapse of one possibility, resentment, retribution, suffering, into favor of another, peace, clarity, coherence. And in spiritual terms, forgiveness is seeing through God's eyes, because the Course of Miracles reminds us that there's nothing to forgive, that God's eyes are too pure to perceive iniquity. God isn't judging me. God isn't judging you. That's unconditional love doesn't judge. So forgiveness is the key to happiness. And Course in Miracles reminds us that forgiveness is the key to healing the myth of separation, because it unhooks us from the past and restores us to the present and reminds us that our pain, whether we're in pain or not, reminds us that wherever we are, we begin to resonate with a different frequency. Whether I'm in pain or not, or another's in pain, I begin to resonate in a frequency of coherence where everything is already whole. So forgiveness is frequency work. The Aramaic root of the word to forgive, shubakana, means to untie or to unhook. It means to forgive a debt. It means to unhook a horse from a cart. It means that we're going to unhook from, I'm not going to deny the past. I'm just not getting caught in it. And in quantum terms, we remain entangled with those that we are not in, that we are not forgiving. I remain entangled with anyone that I am not forgiving. This is key. So healing entanglement through forgiveness, even if I never say another word to that person, if I've healed it within me and my frequency, I shift the relationship and I shift the outcomes. So when we do this inner work, we shift the collective field. Entanglement isn't a metaphor, it's a map, and healing does reach others. Nelson Mandela is one of my favorite examples, because his choice to forgive after apartheid and release his inner hatred changed his whole nation's energy. Imagine what would happen if millions of us began to live in a field of forgiveness. Because we don't really need to change the world. We don't need to change anything out there. It starts with the story within me. And as I reclaim my energy from blame and shame and separation and inherited division, I remember who I am. I remember who you are, that we're not separate and that we're all healing. So that's what was coming through for Walking the Path this Thursday. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm wishing you richest blessings, and I'll see you next week.